back during the pandemic when everybody was in a lockdown, everyone was surrounded by negative news. We're gonna die. We're gonna die. We're gonna die. And then all of a sudden, you and John come up with something that captured the imagination of Americans and the rest of the world. And so, what is some good news?
Some good news began as a distraction for a pandemic-isolated world's need for good news, and had since sort of accidentally transformed into a cultural movement globally, advanced by millions of individuals around the world and creating this really beautiful, I called it a co-creation with the audience and John, that was happening every day. And it really tapped into a very specific soft spot of the spirit that just focused on things that were good in the world. Not like, the numbers itself, like I love the numbers, right? I love 5 million fans. I love 100 million plus views to the full episodes. I love over 300 million views to the clips and the GIFs. What I love more is the influx every single episode of Some Good News fan art, of kids recreating the Some Good News themes, of people turning their dens into Some Good News proms, into them graduating with us and helping connect people to Oprah and Malala and Steven Spielberg and Jon Stewart. It's in measuring that love that's where you can find the fact that could be the biggest.
So let me summarize this a little bit to the listener, okay? So you guys are just sitting there in a lockdown and you're like, hey, let us produce a show that is dedicated to good news, and let us call it Some Good News, and let us have John just show us good stuff that is happening around the world. And to your surprise, it blew up. It got 5 million followers in a span of 14 videos, and you raised more than $5 to $10 million worth of donations. Now you sold it to CBS, and it's going to become a real show on the internet called Some Good News. Is that a fair summary of what happened?
That's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, we did 8 episodes, so it was 2-month run, eight different episodes created by John with the simple premise of celebrating the good in the world, carried out by everyday people. And ended up turning into this sort of celebratory showcase of humanity's spirit that not only attracted the hearts of viewers and fans, but attracted the hearts of the biggest legacy media brands in the world and the biggest brands in the world to say, hey, wait a second, this is a potential way forward for being able to communicate with our audience.
So why did it take this long for a Some Good News show to show up? The problem with news is that good news doesn't really do well. Like if I want to get 1 million views right now, like probably the safest route would be just make a video, talk about problems in China, or talk about US failure to test people or deal with coronavirus. People are more attracted to drama, to negative, to fear, than they are to like good and inspiring and whatnot. Okay, so let me play for the next 10 minutes for the listener. Let me play the devil's advocate, okay? Can I do that?
Please.
All right. Devil's advocate. Parallel at the same time, ironically enough, I started something similar called Nas News. And Nas means people in Arabic. So it's called People's News, right? And similarly, the focus was to focus only the good things that are happening in the world. Like this country beat coronavirus. This person did this. That person did that. It worked during the pandemic. It worked quite well. It got 200,000 followers, and it was on its way to success. But then for some reason, it just stopped working. And my hypothesis is that people needed good news during the lockdown more than ever. But when life is back to normal, the desire for good news will not be that big ever again in the future. Doesn't that mean that maybe, maybe the show will not get the same metrics or the same interest next year? Are you worried about that? Are you at least 1% worried about that?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not in the slightest.
Damn, I love that confidence.
No, it should raise it, because I think it's just interesting, how humans have a soft spot for gossip and juiciness. People also have a soft spot for good news. And I think that changes as preferences for news changes, as current events change. We wouldn't be able to do the show exactly as we did it in April today. It wouldn't work. Week by week, we really sat down, every Monday after the show came out, we gave ourselves a few hours break. We would sit down on Zoom and say, what do we want to do next? What good can we do in the world on this day? And I think the one thing, the differentiator here that made it so I think this will stay around forever, is that this show, it's John Krasinski. He's one of the most famous actors in the world, certainly in America. He's an incredibly loved guy, and he is as cool, in behind the scenes on Zoom trying to figure out how to do a prom than he is on screen. But John was really, I would say, not even less than half of the show. John was an incredible vessel, an incredible delivery system. He did bring that SGN magic from the height of his platform being John Krasinski and knowing the people he knows. It's easy to get Billie Eilish when you're John Krasinski, and Billie Eilish loves The Office, right? The real magic, what made the show what it was, and why the show or how the show started, was John tweeting out to his followers and his fans, we need some good news in the world. What do you got for me? Send me stuff. And all of a sudden, you got people from Ohio, you got people from Japan, you got people from India, you got people from everywhere sending little bits and pieces. Today, my daughter did a remote graduation, and she's so happy. Look at her. Today, my son is found out he's cancer free. Today, we threw a social distance surprise party for our parents, and all of a sudden, you just see these kind of really piercing stories of humanity that don't need to be overproduced, that are filmed on cameras that look like, iPhones to potato quality cameras.
But how many of these can you see?
We can see a lot of them. I mean, so John has a phenomenal 2-person team or 2 to 3-person team that really partners with him and produces everything. So they were culling all this stuff, and we put it in, and all of a sudden we recognize we're getting such an influx of good news pieces that we organized our show to show those. So John, like I said, is the host and the vessel, but the meat of the show lies in the everyday people. And I think there is a certain magic of seeing somebody normal and everyday who looks like you are reflected in the content, be celebrated in a way that even John Krasinski can highlight their good deeds.
Got it. Okay, you were at Vice for 5 years. Why doesn't Vice become a good news network?
That's a loaded question. Vice could be a lot of things. Vice is a lot of things. Vice has its current, hands full, kind of trying to scale cool, trying to scale, grow with a millennial audience while simultaneously reaching a Gen Z audience. Vice was born out of the new digital media, which is now, I think, struggling to keep up with promises that it's kept, not only just for Vice, but across the industry. So they have their hands full, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not doing good news, but I think it means that their business model is not one geared towards that.
Okay, how do you make money then? How do you make money from good news? What's the best way to make money from good news? Let's say you and I, Lars, we're creating a good news channel right now. Call it Lars Nas. Okay? And it's not a bad name.
Not a bad name.
And essentially we say we're gonna be a copy of some good news, but we're not going to rely on foundations to make our business model, because that's a terrible business model. And we're going to rely on some Facebook ads, some YouTube ads, some Google ads. Where the hell do you make money?
Sure. Well, we have so Lars Nas has a platform. We're celebrating good news, and we want to do that with the help of our community and our influential friends. And we want to put the world's biggest brands in that space, side by side with them, not above, not below. We want them to hold hands with the community. We want them to hold hands with us, and we want them to hold with our partners to identify the ways to give back in the world, and then turn those moments into these sort of unreplicable marketing scale and brand love opportunities. So when we did, the way I see it is treat them like a member of the community,
but charge them,
but recognize that we want to help you